Tamed, tamed, stigmatised. Black hair is never just hair, according to writer Emma Dabiri, who says cases of black children being punished for their hairstyles have escalated across the country.
Following recent high-profile cases of pupils being excluded from schools, including Ruby Williams, who received £8,500 in an out-of-court settlement, Emma believes the 2010 Equality Act should be changed to include protection of Afro hair. And
Emma joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
What happened to Ruby?
So Ruby was excluded from school and was sent home repeatedly for leaving her hair as it grows from her head, for having Afro hair, essentially. The school maintained that it was distracting and affecting other pupils' learning, I believe.
Goodness me. Is this a problem that black children who want to wear their Afro hair naturally regularly face?
So this is something we're seeing happening with really shocking frequency. It's happening a lot in London, but also lots of other parts of the country as well, where black and mixed-race children are regularly being excluded from school, from lessons, put in isolation, not allowed...
Not as a result of how they're wearing their hair, really?
Their hair, and their hair...
What is it about their hair and how they're wearing it that means that it's contravening the rules?
So, basically, it's... any of the ways... OK, so if you have an afro, as in the case of Ruby,
yes,
that's often an issue. But then if you use any of the basic styles of kind of maintenance that are required for naturally textured Afro hair, so twists, locks, fades, anything like that, a lot of those styles also contravene the rules as well. So it's basically Afro hair as it grows from our heads, but also the basic maintenance styles for Afro hair, for natural Afro hair, are also falling foul of this as well.
And the rules change, don't they, from school to school? So I suspect that, you know, some are much more tolerant, some perhaps a little stricter. But I presume that in the school would defend themselves by saying we want hair neat and tied back. You have an issue, don't you, with that sort of instruction? Because sometimes that's just not possible.
Absolutely, because who is defining what neat, what qualifies as neat? These are quite presentable. These are quite culturally kind of loaded terms, because for Afro-textured hair, my hair is actually tied back today, but the effort required to do that is very extensive. I've had to blow dry it straight in order to do that, and that's not something that I would be willing to do regularly or every day because of heat damage and the time that it takes as well. So for us, kind of neat and presentable hairstyles would be braided hairstyles, would be twisted hairstyles, would be even worn short and shaved.
So you want to go so far as to change the law?
That's what I think needs to happen. Currently, race is protected under the Equalities Act of 2010. It's a protected characteristic. When you look at race, it's divided down into colour, ethnicity and nationality. Because hair is as much a signifier of African ancestry as colour is, I propose that the Equalities Act is extended to also include hair, and then that would solve this issue.
Do you think there's schools out there that don't appreciate just how difficult it is? Because it seems like this is a very sort of, you know, prevalent issue for lots of students that will be getting up this morning, it's 7:45, and they'll be panicking about trying to look smart and tidy as their teacher there, and they just don't really understand the process that's involved.
So I think that's often the case as well. I think it's just an ignorance about the realities of Afro-textured hair and a lack of knowledge about the protective styles that we need to maintain our hair. And there's an assumption that all hair conforms to the same norms, but these are standards that reflect the characteristics of European hair, of Caucasian hair. So these are kind of rules made by white people for white people without a lack of knowledge about Afro hair and its needs.
Your book is called Don't Touch My Hair.
It is indeed.
Can you explain there's a very important reason behind that title?
Yes, so as most people with Afro hair will be aware, there is a lot of unsolicited touching of our hair, particularly, well, it actually doesn't really matter. It happens in all styles. When I have it out in an afro, that really attracts a lot of unwanted hands and interference.
Do you think
but
that
also when I
might
have braids.
Do you think that might be one of the reasons that schools want afros to be tied back is in order to perhaps protect those pupils from that sort of attention.
But I think that protection shouldn't fall on the student to change their hair. I think there should just be a strong message that you don't interfere with the hair of another person.
Emma, in countries where there is predominantly black students, sort of different continents and what have you, do they have is hair tended to be allowed to sort of do what it needs to do naturally? Do they have less strict rules in the education system over there?
Well, it depends on the country, and there was a really high-profile case going back now in 2016 where there were protests in a high school in South Africa where the same thing was happening. Black children were being told that they couldn't come to school with Afro hair or natural hairstyles because that was it didn't subscribe to the school's uniform policy of kind of neatness and presentability. But that was even happening in an African country. But of course, that's an African country with a history of apartheid, and it does reflect these norms. These rules do reflect a very Eurocentric bias that exists in schools. And I often think there's the argument that these policies are neutral and that they are just a standard that's applied to everybody, but it's not a standard that reflects the reality of our hair. And if you kind of flipped it and said to white students, okay, so the uniform policy is that you have to come to school with an afro, or you have to come to school with cornrows, or you have to come to school with a twist out, or you have to come to school with any of kind of the styles that are ordinary for us. That would be very hard for white children to achieve those styles. Perhaps they could, but the effort and labour, and it just doesn't reflect, it doesn't represent the way Caucasian hair grows. It would be a struggle for them to achieve those styles. And you would see then how unfair it is and how it's not, there is a bias. This isn't neutral.
Well, Emma, it's interesting to hear your experience, and thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Emma Dabiri, the author of Don't Touch My Hair.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.